So, I'm going to review the first Saw film. So, there's a lot to say about the Saw series, but I'm gonna try to minimize it to just a more basic type, a basic kind of premise, because the Saw series, if you like research it, it has e- expanded. It's to the point where it's like it's really confusing where you get to movies like Saw 7, Saw 6. But Saw 1, if you watch it, I don't think it was supposed to have a sequel, honestly. Like the ending, it really kind of made it seem like you kind of can't go anywhere else with it. I mean, like there are ways you can make a sequel, but it doesn't feel like it's a movie that required a sequel, and I'll try to explain that later. So everyone knows the basis of this movie. It's probably one of the most made fun of premises now. Two guys wake up in some messed up public restroom, and they have no idea how they got there. And one of them is Adam, who by the films, what I've seen of the film, he's a photographer who is hired by people to take photos of so they can use it for blackmail. And the other guy is Dr. Lawrence Gordon, who's a cancer doctor. And throughout the whole film, and they're shackled, and the game is Dr. Gordon has to kill Adam, or else the killer in this film, Jigsaw, will kill Dr. Gordon's family. Okay, and the whole film is them trying to escape and trying to avoid the final outcome. And a lot of people don't like this film, and a lot of people don't like the series in like totally. But I actually like the first film. I actually honestly do, and it's on a different kind of tier from the rest of the films because whereas Saw 1 didn't, it actually did not focus so much on the torture. I mean, there is torture, but it didn't focus so much on the torture as it did on like the psychological element of them trying to find out the identity of the killer, or them trying to not play the game. I mean, a lot of people missed that about the first film. They like due to the reputation of the other films, people kind of consider the first film just to be a torture film, and it is a torture film, but there's a more it's more in line of a psychological thriller than it is of a torture porn kind of film like Hostel or Cabin Fever, both Eli Roth films. And what really makes Saw 1 stand out from the other Saw films is it the story. The other films do have a very good, like a very confusing story, but Saw 1 is more story oriented. Like you can tell that they focus the most on the story on this film. Like Saw 2 and up, you kind of can tell that they focus more on the special effects and how cool the traps look or how painful the traps look, rather than story. I mean, you can kind of, if you actually look at the movie, it's kind of like a spectrum. Like on one end of the spectrum, Saw 1 is story oriented. Saw 7, Saw 7 does have a story, but it it really, I don't really consider it to be story oriented. It's more on the torture traps. I mean, but if I'm honestly thinking of which film was the most saw was the most torture kind of the most torturous film, I think it'd be Saw 4. But anyways, I'm going off topic. Saw 1. Is it a good film? I actually really do like this film, and I mentioned that before, but I like it for the reasons that it is a very good psychological thriller. It keeps you guessing, and the fact that you only see it from the viewpoints of of two groups. Like you do see it from the perspective of two detectives on the outside, but when you're on the viewpoints of Lawrence Gordon and Adam in the bathroom, you never know the full story. Like it's like a person kind of story. Like you never know, or no, it's more of a third person story where you only know what these two characters know. You don't know everything else around them. And And it also the movie also what's the word? It also makes this kind of premise a lot more interesting because throughout these portions of the film where it's on Lord, Gordon, and Adam, it also cuts out to parts where like they find something in the bathroom and then they discover that has some importance to them and then they discuss it, but then they sometimes lie to each other, and then later on you see the truth and it starts to add up until the very end. And the ending where everything just comes out, it's like it's honestly one of the best twist endings I've ever seen. And a lot of people try to contest the realism of the ending, but you know what? In the end, it's a movie. I mean, like, I don't really mind if it's not the most realistic ending. I just want, a good movie, like a very entertaining movie. And the ending, the ending honestly got me. Like, as a guy who, as a guy who can predict movies, I did not predict that, or most of the film actually. So, am I recommending Saw 1? If you don't like these kinds of movies, like, even though I said Saw 1's more story oriented, there is a level of grisly violence to Saw 1. So, I do not suggest it for people who don't like this movie, these kinds of movies. But I do suggest it for people who like psychological thrillers, or, thrillers like, thrillers in general, right? Because it is a very good one, and if you want to see any of the Saw series, watch Saw 1. Like, Saws 2 and up are okay, but Saw 1 is definitely the best.